U.S. consumer spending increased more than expected in September. The Bank of Japan keeps its short-term interest rates target unchanged at 0.25%. And the International Monetary Fund expects growth in MENA region to rebound to 4% in 2025. Welcome to Economic Bulletin, where we present comprehensive coverage and expert insights on key updates regarding pivotal economic trends and financial shifts. Welcome back. We start off with the United States, where the Commerce Department reports that the personal consumption expenditures index rose 0.2% in September and increased 2.1% year-on-year. Inflation continued to close in on the Federal Reserve's 2% annual target in September to its lowest level since February 2021, even as the monthly pace of price growth ticked higher. Core personal consumption expenditures, which excludes volatile food and energy prices, rose 0.3% for the month and increased 2.7% from a year ago, in line with estimates. U.S. consumer spending increased slightly more than expected in September, putting it and the economy on a higher growth trajectory in the final 3 months of the year. Data from the Commerce Department's Bureau of Economic Analysis reported that consumer spending rose 0.5% last month after an upwardly revised 0.3% gain in August. Consumer spending accounts for more than 2/3 of U.S. economic activity. Our next story stays in the U.S., where applications for unemployment benefits fell last week to the lowest since May as the country recovers from the impact of 2 severe storms. The U.S. Department of Labor announced that the number of seasonally adjusted initial jobless claims in the United States decreased by 12,000 to 216,000 in the week ending October 26. The claims report showed that the number of people receiving benefits after an initial week of aid, a proxy for hiring, decreased 26,000 to a seasonally adjusted 1,862 million during the week ending October 19th. And moving on to Asia, the Bank of Japan has opted to keep its short-term interest rates largest unchanged at 0.25% following the conclusion of its 2-day monetary policy review. The bank suggested that improving conditions, particularly in the United States economy, may enable future rates increase. The central bank projected Japan's inflation will hover around its 2% target in the coming years, reinforcing its stance gradually tighten borrowing costs as long as the economy shows steady recovery. The BOJ lowered its core inflation forecasts for 2025 to 1.9%, but kept its 2026 outlook steady. Commenting on the decision, Bank of Japan governor noted a reduction in economic risks tied to the US, adding that inflation could reach around 2% in the coming years, which would support further rate increases. The governor said the timing of the next rate hike remains data-dependent, with no preset plans. He emphasized that significant political or economic changes would prompt adjustments to BOJ policies. Analysts suggest the BOJ may implement a rate increase by early 2025, contingent on sustained economic growth and wage improvements.
国内のデータについては、先ほど申し上げた
In other news, Japanese government data has revealed that factory output in September rose 1.4% on a monthly basis, compared to a median market forecast for a 1% rise. Manufacturers surveyed by the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry expect seasonally adjusted output to jump 8.3% in October and 3.7% in November. Separate data showed Japanese retail sales in September rose 0.5% from a year earlier, well below the median market forecast for a 2.3% rise. In China, the Electricity Council reported that electricity consumption grew by 7.9% year-on-year in the first three quarters of 2024, reaching 7.4 trillion kilowatts per hour. This growth was 2.4 percentage points higher than the same period in 2023. August and September saw even higher rates of 8.9% and 8.5% respectively. Vice President of the CEC noted that the central government's macro control measures and new policies have stabilized the economy and supported electricity consumption. The manufacturing and services industries grew by 5.9% and 11.2%, contributing 48.9% and 25.9% to overall consumption growth. Hong Kong's economy expanded 1.8% year-on-year in the third quarter of 2024, though growth fell short of the 3.1% forecast by analysis. This follows a 3.2% growth rate in the second quarter and 2.8% in the first quarter of 2024. The government noted slower goods export growth and a dip in private consumption due to evolving spending habits. However, it anticipates continued growth supported by the global monetary easing and China's economic recovery efforts. On a quarterly basis, Hong Kong's economy contracted 1.1% in the third quarter, following a modest 0.3% growth in the second quarter. Moving to Europe, statistics agency Eurostat has revealed that the Eurozone inflation rose more than expected in October, reaching 2% up from 1.7% in September, primarily driven by higher food and energy prices. This increase has raised concerns about the timing of the potential interest rate cuts by the European Central Bank. Core inflation, excluding food and energy, remained steady at 2.7% above the forecast of 2.6%, while inflation has decreased significantly since hitting double digits 2 years ago. Most economists anticipate it will stabilize at the ECB's target of 2% in the first half of 2025, despite some expected volatility. In line with Eurozone's inflation data released, European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde said that Eurozone inflation will durably reach the European Central Bank 2% target in the course of 2025. Lagarde stated that interest rates cuts will continue, but their size and timing will be determined by upcoming economic data. She indicated that no recession is expected in the euro area from 2024 to 2026 and reaffirmed that the ECB's commitments to reducing interest rates. However, Lagarde cautioned that while progress is being made on inflation, it is not yet fully under control, emphasizing the need for prudence. Future rate cuts will rely on economic developments in the coming months. More on inflation, preliminary data from the National Institute of Statistics and Economic Studies showed that French consumer prices rose in line with the expectations in October. France's harmonized inflation rate increased to 1.5% year-on-year in October. The institute reported that the near stability in inflation is attributed to a slowdown in service prices and a smaller year-on-year decline in energy prices compared to September. Britain's Finance Minister Rachel Reeves has defended her budget record tax hikes, saying she has additional plans to boost economic growth without needing further tax increases. Reeves' budget included the largest tax rise since 1993 to support public services and allowed for more borrowing for long-term investment. The Office for Budget Responsibility projects 2% growth in 2025, slightly up from previous forecasts, but reducing future estimates, challenging Prime Minister Keir Starmer's aim to make Britain the G7's fastest-growing economy. Reeves acknowledged the impact of social security increases on business profits and wages, but stressed ongoing reforms to support economic expansions.
That they did not fund, and their failure to assess the scale of the challenges facing our public sector.
German retail sales rose unexpectedly by 1.2% in September, marking a continued upward trend since June, though at a slower pace. September's data and the Business Climate Index among retailers in October that retail sales continued to be a growth driver into the last quarter of the year. Recent surveys reflect a modest improvement in the retail business climate for October, with retailers viewing their current situation slightly more positively. However, expectations for the coming months remain cautious as business outlook holds steady at low levels. Canada's third quarter output grew slower than the Bank of Canada's latest estimate, according to Statistics Canada. Preliminary data suggests gross domestic product rose 0.3% in September following August's flat growth. Statistics Canada said that a 1.2% contraction in manufacturing was the biggest drag on the economy in August, adding that retooling and maintenance activities at multiple auto plants contributed to the decline. Welcome back. In the MENA region, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, said that growth in the Middle East and North Africa region is expected to rebound to 4% next year. According to the IMF's latest regional economic outlook, growth in the region will remain sluggish at 2.1% in 2024, lower than earlier projections, as geopolitical and macroeconomic factors weigh. Growth in the Caucasus and Central Asia is projected to remain strong at 4.5% in 2025. The IMF warned that the outlook for the entire region, including the Caucasus and Central Asia, carries significant downside risks. It emphasized the need to accelerate structural reforms, particularly in governance and labor markets, to enhance medium-term growth prospects. Joining us today to discuss the economic development in the MENA region is Dr. Faris Mesdour. Good evening to you.
Good afternoon.
Right. Mr. Faris, what factors influence growth expectations for both the MENA region, particularly concerning oil production cuts and ongoing conflicts?
Originally, if wars we witness in the world, particularly the Ukrainian war and what's happening in Gaza, the MENA region had been affected grossly in the region, and therefore we expect that the process of the main materials will be increasing, and if the region will be affected as a result of this world changes or the current world incidents, that we see that they're not going to stop soon, or expectations will be far than we expect. As I said, that the Russian-Ukrainian war won't be a short-term war, but would last for a longer time.
Now, how do you see the production cuts under the OPEC Plus agreement affect growth for costs for Gulf states and other oil exporting countries?
Firstly, the exported countries are not actually high technological in compared to the advanced country. And as you know that the right technology, it's a higher prices than before. Therefore, I expected that the cost of extraction, the oil will be increasing during the upcoming years, which means that would affect the prices of the materials of vast users and the exported countries.
Right. What are the main challenges facing regional economies of MENA, and how do these challenges impact emerging markets and growth forecasts?
Originally, the MENA region is divided two parts. The first one, the producing oil that have a great is particularly the Gulf producing oil that are not affect at large of what would happen diplomatically in the future. Although they are going to cost, they will be having the cost of the expenditures, and the second part, the other countries that do not have the potential, such as in the Gulf areas, that will pay a high price, and the levels of living will rise at large, and the levels of poverty will be increased, and otherwise the social disturbance will be more than before.
That's for the Middle East and North Africa. What affect economic growth in these areas?
They are linked also in the current changes throughout the world, not only the Asian countries or the Caucasian countries, but have rather affected as much as the region and Africa. Africa is very poor, that needs the food, but these regions will be overcoming the crisis due to their potentials. Above all, the Asian region kind of a way of the current situation. Of course, will be affected, but not in the same shape that the MENA or the North Africa or in African countries in general.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Faris, for your fruitful insights. And still in the MENA region, General Authority for Statistics showed that Saudi Arabia's economy experienced a year-on-year growth of 2.8% in the third quarter. The growth was primarily driven by a 4.2% increase in non-oil activities. Government activities rose by 3.1%, while the oil sector saw a brisk growth of 0.3%. Data reported by the authority that, in contrast, GDP had contracted in the second quarter due to a nearly 9% decline in oil activities. On a quarterly basis, real GDP increased by 0.8%. According to the Turkish Statistical Institute, Turkey's tourism revenues totaled $46.8 billion in the first 9 months of 2024, reflecting a 6.6% increase from the previous year. The country welcomed over 48 million visitors from January compared to 2020. Average spending per visit during this period was $970, down 1.6% from the previous year. In the third quarter alone, Turkey generated $23.2 billion in tourism revenue, a 3.9% increase year-on-year from July to September. 23.2 million visitors traveled to Turkey, up 3.9%, with average expenditures per person reaching almost $1,000. Well, that's all for now. Here is a roundup of today's key headlines. US consumer spending increases more than expected in September. Bank of Japan keeps its short-term interest rates target unchanged at 0.25%. And International Monetary Fund expects growth in MENA region to rebound to 4% in 2025. Well, that's all for today's Economic Bulletin on Qnews. Stay connected for more news and updates. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEGY to stay informed. For real-time updates, connect with us on the UMS digital platform. Watch it. Many thanks for watching.